One of the largest ecological disasters in human history is the shrinkage of the Aral Sea. The sea's man-made shrinkage spans several decades and starts with the mismanagement by the Soviet government. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union and its leader, Nikita Khrushchev, took a radically anthropocentric approach to the environment, favoring humans over the ecosystem. Many reforms were made to convert untouched nature or virgin lands into agricultural plantations in order to feed the country's growing population. Little regard was given to the effects these radical changes would have on the environment. In the 1960s, by establishing a program to promote agriculture, particularly the growth of cotton in Central Asia, the Soviet Union, led by Khrushchev, sought to become a major exporter of cotton. This, however, was at the expense of two rivers that fed the Aral Sea, the Amu Darya and the Sir Darya. As a result, the Soviet government decided to divert those rivers to irrigate cotton plantations in desert regions of modern-day Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, rather than supply the Aral Sea with water, which almost immediately led to less water being provided to it. The Aral Sea typically receives 1/5 of its water supply through rainfall. In contrast, 4/5 of its water is delivered through both rivers. The decrease in water fed into the Aral Sea led to catastrophic effects on it and its ecosystem. By the 1980s, the Aral Sea had shrunk 60% of its original size. Then, by the 2000s, the Aral Sea was only 25% of its original size. In addition, the sea level dropped approximately 20 meters, since the sea's water sources were diverted. Shrinkage of the Aral Sea had an increase in the levels of salinity in the water. In the 2000s, the Aral Sea had 5 times more salinity than it had in the 1960s. This level of salinity led to the ecosystem in and around the Aral Sea to collapse entirely. Although prior to the 1960s, the biodiversity of the Aral Sea was not considered high, it held over 24 species of fish and 100 land animal species. With the lowered sea level and the increase in salinity, none of the fish species were left. Only a dozen species of land animals were resilient enough to survive. On top of an environmental collapse, the shrinkage of the Aral Sea is also linked to desertification, dust storms, and salinization of soil in the surrounding areas. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the two nations on the Aral Sea, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, were left with the burden of an environmental disaster. In an attempt to reduce the impacts of the sea level drop of the Aral Sea, the Kazakh government built Dike Kok Aral. This concrete dam separates the northern and southern parts of the Aral Sea. This dammed northern Aral Sea has seen a decrease in salinity and a water level rise of 8 meters. The use of technology to solve environmental issues shows that the Kazakh government has taken a technocentric approach to restore the Aral Sea, and how the shrinkage of the Aral Sea has shifted environmental views from anthropocentric to technocentric.